Hi folks, Tastus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the concepts of social trust in a society and how important it is, and how loss of social trust or reduction in social trust has terrible and all-encompassing negative consequences to any society that falls into that state of social mistrust or distrust. So now, having done a massive amount of business traveling over the years, and still do some of it, but the one of the things that I noticed when I started traveling and subsequent to that was, as soon as you move outside of the Western world, and there are varying degrees of social trust even within the Western world, but as soon as you move outside the Western world, the amount of social trust plummets. It's absolutely worlds and universes apart. The West has, on a relative basis, unusually high levels of social trust. Now, you may think the West isn't perfect in social trust, and it's not. But compared to other parts of the world, the social trust in the West is very high. And the trust was in all areas. It was in the public services, in the government, in education, in the legal system, in commercial dealings. Now, it doesn't mean they weren't scallywags. It doesn't mean they weren't dud politicians or judges that made bad decisions, policemen that weren't honest. So it didn't mean that. But the social trust in society at all levels was, compared to other countries and areas outside of the West, the levels of social trust were very high. Now, this meant a lot of things were possible, organisationally, economically, commercial development. A lot of things were possible because of these high levels of social trust. That it was implicit that somebody would behave in a certain manner in terms of their their legal and sensible and reasonable and rational behaviour, that people would behave in a certain manner, and that you could pretty much count on that. It didn't mean that legal agreements and contracts weren't necessary, particularly in, say, things like property development. That they're always the case. Even you go back to, say, ancient Athens and ancient Rome, you can find construction contracts with construction firms that pretty much look like any construction contract that you would have today. The same sort of things, companies then underquoting on the work and hoping to pick it up through variations to the work and things like that. That's something that's been around for thousands of years. And there was a Roman diary that was dug up, I think, in Pompeii, where the guy writing the diary was complaining how the property developers were bribing the judges and the local politicians. I mean, ain't nothing changed, seriously. Over thousands of years. But coming back to social trust, so I found that in other countries the social trust was very low. It didn't mean that a very small elite didn't trust each other, but even that was on a minimal scale. And the assumption was that other people were trying to screw you. Now, some of this came not necessarily from just social or lack of social trust and isolation. The idea that many of these third world countries had was that the amount of wealth in the world was absolutely fixed. They had no concept of how you create new wealth, and therefore they thought, well, the only way we can make money or win in this business transaction is if we take what he has, and what he's trying to do is take what we have so he has more. So there's this pre-assumption that you were trying to take things from just a fixed, limited pot of wealth. And it's very hard to explain to people, like even people that purport to be sophisticated and are at the apex of their third world, shithole society. It's still very difficult to explain to them about how new wealth is created. And I remember having many conversations with people of all sorts of different races and places and languages and customs and cultures I jet into one place. Now they're never going to sell a lot of what the company I'm working for. They're never going to sell a lot of the product. So I've been told by the CEO, we want to have a commercial presence in this region. and the region's just too poor to absorb much of this product, which was a high-tech product. And so I'm setting up a distribution, sort of small distribution network. I'm just simplifying the thing here, but now I want it to be done quickly, and I can't spend a lot of money, can't spend a lot of time on it. No matter what we do, we're going to lose money in this area. But again, the CEO said that they wanted a presence, so that's my duty to do what I'm told there. But they don't see it this way. They see he's come to screw us. He's come to do a deal where we lose and he gains, and we got to watch out for that. We got, those crafty white devils. We've got to, be on our guard, and so they want an elaborate, drawn-out, dramatic negotiation, and they all have to turn up. The family members and the third cousins, they're all turning out here, the wider clan, and then they've hired their special consultant, and it's bigger than Ben-Hur, and so on. And there's me. So there's 50 of them pile into the room to do negotiations. So I'm trying to explain, I can see where it's heading. So I'm trying to explain, look, you're never going to sell more than 10 widgets a month, and that's of the sort of the entry level product. No matter how it turns, we're not going to really make money on this, but I'm going to give you the price that we would give a very large distributor in America or some huge market. So I'm giving you that price because I don't want to be drawn in. I'm paraphrasing. This isn't how I explained it, but I don't want to be drawn into a situation where we've got to come back every few weeks to handhold you and look after you and give you a level of support, because if we do that, then it's going to cost us a fortune to do business with you, and it won't be worth it, and we'll just walk away and you'll get nothing. But if we can limit the damage, the loss we're going to make, and I'll do that by giving you a fantastic price. If we can limit the damage and the loss, then I'm happy to go ahead. So I'm trying to explain it like this. So the amount of business you're going to do is by it's going to be well below our minimum standard for appointing a distributor. So you're below our minimum standard. Yeah. That's what you say. You tell us that. Yeah. We know that you're really trying to screw us, you white devil motherfucker. So it's very difficult to deal with people because the concept of social trust and the concept of wealth creation are quite foreign to them. They don't understand it, or don't have it in the case of trust, and don't understand it in the other. So no amount of talking, the more you talk and try and explain it, the more they perceive it as a trick. You're trying to trick them, and they're always looking for a trick. Where is the deception? Where is it? We can't see it, but it must be here somewhere. And so you're dealing with people with that overall attitude. Now, over a period of years, you can overcome that, but there's not enough commercial value in this region for us to spend that amount of time, and it would have to be at a substantial loss over a period of years. Now, some big multinationals may do it as a strategic decision that to get in now, and they'll run at a loss for 10 years, 15 years, knowing that, or believing and hoping in the end they're going to come out in front, and at least they're going to prevent competitors from getting into the sometimes there are strategic considerations like that. But it's an example of one of the many that I came across, by the way, of social trust. Now, take the alternative, the social trust, say in a Western country, whether it be Britain or New Zealand or Canada or United States, or even to a lesser extent Western Europe, but that too, the high trust was still there. So we could come into town, we could meet the people, and they understood the commercial issues, understood, more or less the rules. Okay, how much? What's the price we can get? Okay, what support can you give us here? How will you? What's the access to resources? And they knew what they needed. They understood and they trusted what we said would be reliable, and vice versa. By the way, if they said, well, we're going to do this and that and the next thing, then we would accept that as fact. Not that agreements weren't in place, they were, and contracts and so on, that they were there. But the underlying assumption of the way those contracts and agreements are structured is that you have a certain degree or a minimal degree of social trust, or minimum level of social trust that you need to be able to have further levels of, albeit conditional trust in some cases, in terms of the overall commercial transaction you're dealing with people. Similarly, if the if the numbers weren't there and they were falling behind or something like that, I would call them or visit, depending on what it was. But I would talk to them, and if they said, well, we faulted this quarter because of these reasons, but we'll pick it up in the next quarter. I might ask questions to ensure that their understanding of their predicament was sophisticated enough for them to relay this to me. Sometimes you can get amateurish considerations, which aren't deceptions or treachery or anything. They're just amateurs not understanding the issues. So I would still go through a series of questions and so on, just to make sure that I was happy they understood what they were doing. But the issue was that the level of social trust between us was such that if they said, I'll accept it. Okay, fine. I wouldn't need to go to some legal threats or anything like that. Now, not that at times it didn't get legal, by the way, it did, but that was quite rare in the overall. Given the many transactions we conducted, there was a very small number of legal issues, or where even legal stuff was threatened, and you could even do that. Say, look, I don't want to go legal on this, so help me out. Try and do something about this or that. Because if you don't, then the board of directors will take it out of my hands and they'll start doing something. So let's keep it at a controllable level and situation, so that it doesn't get to the point where the boards of directors are writing each other nasty letters and so on. And you needed that level of social trust. But what could take an hour or two in another Western country, and particularly English-speaking one, where levels of trust were again at a higher level than they were elsewhere. Now, doing business in somewhere like still in the Western countries, doing business somewhere in France or I don't know, Germany, Western Europe generally, still reasonably high levels of trust in the overall scheme of things, but not as much as you would get in a English-speaking country, and there's a language difference there. But also, if you look at places like France and Germany and Holland, these countries have been invaded a lot, and private property ownership was always under threat because so many invaders were coming in and helping themselves to the local goodies and so on. So there were different concepts of wealth, how safe it was, how it was to be made, and over what time frame, how quickly, how mobile that wealth was. That was a particular issue as well. So it still was slightly different. Now again, the trust was much higher than it is in third world countries and so on, but it was at a different sort of level, and the higher levels of trust were people who'd been educated in an English-speaking country. They seemed to be a little bit more, and I think some of this was down to language, and also I guess my mistake certainly early on is where I assumed certain levels of trust existed, and over-assessed their assessment of what would constitute an agreement, commercial agreement, within their perception of trust, social trust, or commercial trust in this case. Social trust coming first, commercial trust coming after that. Now, let's sort of fast forward to today, and this is, I'll illustrate, I'll give an example here. There's something I come across in varying forms, but in more or less the same format on each occasion. So we're in having a meeting. There are 4 affirmative action brown and black people in the room, 3 women and 1 male. There's 3 white people in the room, 1 gay white guy, 2 straight white guys. I'm the oldest, I think, by a couple of years. Then the gay guy's about 40, I guess. The brown and black people are younger than that, so they're all between say 27 and 35. So we're in the room, and somebody mentions they've been to like a rock concert or something like that. I think it was. Yes, it was. And then we're talking about concerts. We're talking about the music that we like and the big hits of the day, and the number one selling records, and that sort of stuff. And now the white people only could talk about this because of our shared values and shared experiences. Now, shared values and shared experiences play a role in social trust, quite a big one, I think. But when doing business with these white guys, English speaking, they're all English speaking, even the gay guy, I mean, it doesn't matter. We were able to cover a lot of territory quickly. And again, the implicit trust is I believed what they were saying, they believed what I was saying. Neither of us viewed the other with paranoia or that sort of ingrained, deeply etched type of suspicion. Now, that doesn't mean that if someone acts suspiciously or does dumb or treacherous or evil things, that they won't be viewed differently because of that. But coming into it, entering into it, the assumption is the other person is good, reliable, and trustworthy until they prove otherwise. So there's a non-prejudicial approach to it. Now, this is different because one of the women in the room went off and complained to the diversity department in the company, saying that they were not included in the conversation and they felt bad about it. They felt shunned and they felt oppressed and that they were in a room full of fascist Nazi Hitlers. Now, they may not have known that music or those songs or those rock singers or bands, whatever. They may have not have known about that or not have known about those songs or something. So they weren't able to join in that conversation or contribute. They weren't not included. They were unable to join in, and as I recall, made no attempt to join in. But they still went away and complained, you made us feel bad because we didn't know that. Now, the same can be said, and this is where the wider loss of social trust comes. Once you wave in all these affirmative action people, the minorities, and promoting them and rewarding them based on nothing other than skin color or ideological victim status, which is how the affirmative action race and gender quotas work. Any capability or knowledge the white people have is considered offensive insofar as the brown and black and the minorities, they can't meet that standard. They don't know those things. They can't contribute. They can't play at that level. They can't compete at that level. They can't engage at that level. So they say, well, we're being disenfranchised, in effect, disenfranchised by them knowing something that we don't. Therefore, they are not allowed to demonstrate any capability above what we have. Now, if the affirmative action guys have a high capability, that kind of wouldn't matter, I guess. But they have a much lower capability. They're not waved in on merit or achievement or capability. So anything that white people do, unless the white person is dumb or handicapped or something, anything the white person does in terms of their capability is going to make these brown and black people, particularly the women, feel bad. So this woman goes and complains, and now, we got some blowback on this if you can't talk about things that anything or any subject that doesn't directly include them. Now, the reverse wasn't the case. They could break off into their language, their home, original language, because none of them spoke English. First language, they could break off in that and have discussions and talk about things. And that was fine. So they could not include the white people, totally acceptable. But if the white people did anything to even make these people feel remotely not included, then and with a very chip on shoulder perception of what that might represent, then that was considered unacceptable. Now, so when I go into situations, or since then, it's not worth pissing off a client. It's going to pay your invoice, by the way. But whenever I go into a situation where there are minorities, I don't talk about anything. The self-censorship, and I notice this in other white people, the self-censorship is absolutely total, so that we talk about nothing other than something that's strictly and absolutely germane to the discussion at hand. And even then, the censorship has to be, how can I phrase this in a way that this person, this unqualified, low IQ person will understand, so I don't make them feel insecure. Really, you have to censor that level so that my trust in the commercial interaction of today is far less than it was 20, 30 years ago when merit was deciding the thing. So what I've noticed and I've probably got a better view of this than most people, what I've noticed that is social trust is absolutely galloping out there. It was disappearing at a rate of knots because of these sorts of things, because merit has gone and affirmative action is in. The social trust between the people, and because there's so many non-English speaking people coming from third world countries where there is such low trust. If you look at all the immigration to Australia, and I'll use that as a prime example, just I think 87 or 88% of it is all from extremely low trust countries where wealth creation is something that is not understood even by the elites. So they're bringing their low social trust into our society, and there's a double layer of social trust because they hate the white people so much, and they're told through the school and education system the white people are evil fascist Nazis. So we're seeing a absolute collapsing level of social trust. Now, it's still a bit different when the third world peasants are just being given gifts and given jobs and given this and given welfare and given everything. Then sure, then social trust isn't a matter. Hey, as long as you're giving me shit, it doesn't matter whether I trust you or not. You're giving me stuff, and hey, that's good enough for the month. But as soon as that dries up, then the lack of trust in the Western communities that's being imported will really start to show, and it's manifesting in new businesses and the way people interact and do business. There is far less social trust at all levels, be it commercial or otherwise, and that's having a huge impact on the society and its ability to get along and create wealth. You've been with Tassus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.